Imagine this. Two men are born on the same day. Both grow up poor. Both work hard. Both earn almost the same amount of money. 40 years later, one dies with nothing but bills, regrets, and a lifetime of hard work. The other leaves behind properties, investments, and enough wealth to change his family's future forever. So, what happened? Was one smarter, luckier? Did he earn more? No, the difference came down to one lesson. A lesson so simple that most people ignore it their entire lives. And that's exactly why millions of people spend decades chasing money without ever becoming wealthy. Today, I'm going to tell you a story that hit me hard when I first heard it. A story about a poor man who discovered something that completely changed everything for him. And honestly, it might just change the way you think about money too. Welcome to XTENDOK. Look, if you've ever felt like you're working your tail off every single year, yet somehow the money just vanishes faster than you can even count it, then you need to hear this. Because I'm not here to sell you some get rich quick nonsense. There are no secret crypto hacks, no overnight Amazon FBA success stories, no Lamborghinis rented for Instagram, just one simple timeless truth, a truth that separates people who stay broke their whole lives from those who quietly, steadily build real wealth over time. Stick with me till the end, because what this man learned in the final part of his story, most people never figure it out until it's way too late. There was once a man named Samuel. He lived in a small farming village, the kind where everybody knows everybody. And let me tell you, this guy worked hard, harder than anyone else around every single morning. Before the sun even thought about coming up, Samuel was already out there in the fields. And every evening, long after the sun went down, he was still at it, his hands rough as tree bark, his back always aching, his pockets always empty. Samuel had dreams, you know. He dreamed of living in a house that didn't leak every time it rained. He dreamed of sending his kids to school. He dreamed of just not worrying about where the next meal was coming from. But here's the thing. No matter how hard he pushed, nothing's changed. He'd earn a little money and poof, it was gone. He'd managed to save a few coins. And then boom, some emergency would wipe them out. Year after year after year, Samuel stayed poor. And slowly, he started getting angry. He'd look at the wealthier families in the nearby town and think, they must have been born into it. Or they got lucky. Or maybe they're just crooked. He started telling himself, the system's rigged. People like me were supposed to stay poor. And you know what the worst part was? He actually believed it until one day, everything changed. One year, the harvest completely failed. Samuel worked just as hard as he always did, maybe even harder, but the crops? They gave almost nothing back. The rains didn't come when they were supposed to. The soil just didn't cooperate. That season, he earned almost nothing. His family went hungry. His kids would look at him with these questions in their eyes that he just couldn't answer. He had to borrow money from a merchant in town just to buy seeds for the next planting season. So now he wasn't just poor anymore. He was in debt and debt. That felt like a heavy chain locked around his neck. Samuel's frustration turned into something darker, bitterness, hopelessness. He started thinking, what's even the point? He began waking up later. He still worked, sure, but without any hope, without any fire. And when he did manage to earn a little money, he'd spend it right away. Why save? He'd think. It's just going to disappear anyway. Might as well enjoy something right now. A drink at the tavern, a little comfort. Are you? Something to help him forget, even just for an hour. But the forgetting never lasted. Months dragged on like this. The debt kept growing. His wife would look at him with worry in her eyes, but she never said a word. His kids wore torn, patched up clothes. He felt ashamed, trapped. He'd see merchants passing through the village with their fancy horses and carts loaded with goods, and his heart would just burn with envy. They have everything, he'd think. I have nothing, and nothing I do is ever going to change that. It was such a painful way to live. Then one evening, Samuel sat alone near the edge of the village, staring blankly at the sunset, and an old man sat down beside him. Samuel had never seen this guy before. The old man didn't say anything at first. He just sat there quietly, watching the same sunset Samuel was staring at. Finally, he spoke. You look like a man carrying the weight of the world. Let out this bitter laugh. I'm poor. That's weight enough. The old man nodded slowly. I was once poor too. Samuel looked at him, genuinely surprised. The guy's clothes were simple, sure, but they were clean, well kept. And his eyes? They were bright, peaceful. He didn't look like someone who'd been through hell. You don't look poor now, Samuel said. I'm not, the old man replied. But I used to be. Maybe even poorer than you. Samuel didn't believe him, but honestly, he was too exhausted to argue. Then the old man reached into his bag and pulled out two things. One was a cup with holes in the bottom. The other was a simple clay jar, solid, sealed tight. He set them both on the ground. Then he pulled out a water pouch and poured water into the cup. The water drained right out, disappearing into the dry dirt. Then he poured water into the jar. It stayed full, safe. Tell me, the old man said quietly, which one is wiser? Samuel frowned. The jar, obviously. The cup's broken. It's useless. Exactly, the old man said, his eyes almost glowing. And that is the secret of wealth. Samuel just stared at him. Confused, the old man continued. Wealth isn't about how much water you pour in. It's about whether your container can hold it. The words just hung there in the air. Samuel looked down at the cup, at the dark, wet stain in the dirt where the water had vanished. And for the first time in years, something clicked inside him. His whole life had been like that cup, full of holes. No matter how much he earned, it all just drained away. And he'd spent years blaming the world, blaming the economy, blaming his luck, blaming everything except the one thing he could actually control, the container. How do I fix the cup? Samuel asked, his voice barely a whisper. The old man smiled. You already know how. You just haven't been paying attention. And with that, he stood up, dusted off his robe, and walked away into the evening. Samuel sat there alone, turning that clay jar over in his hands. And he made a decision. The very next morning, Samuel did something he'd never done before. Before heading to the fields, before grabbing his tools, he sat down with a scrap of paper and a pencil. And he wrote down every single coin he'd earned the week before. Then he wrote down every coin he'd spent. For the first time in his entire life, he actually looked at where his money was going. What he saw absolutely shocked him. It wasn't one big expense that was keeping him poor. It was 100 small ones. A drink here, a tool he didn't really need there. Lending money to a neighbor who never paid him back. Buying extra food when he felt down, just to feel a little better. None of it seemed like a big deal in the moment. But when he added it all up, he realized he'd been pouring water into a broken cup for years. So Samuel made a decision. He was going to plug the holes. 1. Buy. 1. He stopped spending on stuff that didn't actually matter. He said no to the tavern. He said no to impulse buys. He even said no to lending money he couldn't afford to lose. And he started setting aside a portion of everything he earned. At first, it was just a few coins a week. The first week, nothing felt different. He was still poor, still in debt. The first month, his life looked exactly the same from the outside. But something inside him had shifted. He didn't feel helpless anymore. He didn't feel like a victim. He felt in control. His neighbors noticed. Why are you saving pennies, Samuel? One of them laughed. You'll never get rich that way. Another shook his head. Poor Samuel. He thinks a few coins are going to change his life. Some mocked him. Others just didn't get it. But Samuel remembered the jar. He remembered the cup with holes. And he kept going, week after week. Month after month, his savings grew slowly. So slowly that some days it felt completely pointless. But he didn't stop. Then, 6 months later, something happened. A traveling merchant came through the village with big news. He was selling a piece of farmland just outside the village. Good land, fertile land, close to the road, at half the usual price. But there was a catch. He needed to sell it fast. He'd only hold the offer for 3 days. And he needed cash. Right then, everyone in the village wanted that land. It was the kind of opportunity that could genuinely change a family's entire future. But nobody had the money. When Samuel heard about it, his heart started pounding. He went home that night and counted his savings. And you know what? It was just enough. every single coin he'd saved over the past 6 months. It was exactly what the merchant was asking for. This was it. This was the moment. His hands actually trembled as he held that little pouch, but then he stopped. He remembered the old man, the cup, the jar, the lesson. And he asked himself a question he'd never asked before. Is this wise, or is this just another way to drain what I've built? He didn't rush. Instead, he went to see the land, inspected it carefully, asked the merchant questions, thought it all through. He asked himself, do I have a real plan for this? Or am I just hoping it'll magically save me? And when he was sure, when he had a clear vision, he pulled the trigger. He bought the land. But here's what made Samuel different this time. He didn't just buy it and cross his fingers. He had a plan. He planted crops he knew would sell well at the market. He used every bit of his remaining money carefully, strategically. He didn't waste a single seed. He didn't freak out when the first month brought no profit. He didn't quit when things moved slowly. He worked with patience, discipline, vision, and within 2 years, that land had doubled his income, the debt he once carried, gone his kids, in school, his home fixed up. The same neighbors who'd laughed at him for saving pennies were now coming to him for advice. Samuel, how'd you do it? They'd ask. And Samuel would just smile, not with pride, but with gratitude. Here's the truth. Asterisk. The secret of wealth isn't about how much you make. It's about how much you keep. It's about plugging the holes in your life, the wasteful spending, the lack of planning, the belief that small amounts don't matter. Wealth starts the moment you stop letting money slip through your fingers. Samuel didn't get rich overnight, but he became something way more important. He became someone who understood money, and that understanding changed everything. Here's the line I want you to walk away with. Asterisk, a poor man with a plan is richer than a wealthy man with a broken cup. Wealth is built in the daily decisions nobody sees, in the small sacrifices, in saying no to what doesn't matter so you can say yes to what does. It's built the moment you stop blaming your circumstances and start taking responsibility for your container. Can't control how much water life pours into your cup, but you can control whether your cup has holes. Look, if you're struggling with money right now, I just want you to know, it's not too late. It doesn't matter where you're starting. It doesn't matter how little you have today. What matters is whether you're willing to look at your cup and start fixing the holes. Start today. Track your spending. Really look at where your money's going. Something, even if it's small, even if it feels like it won't make a difference. Build the habit. Become someone who understands money, not just someone who wishes for it. If this story hit you the way it hit me, do me a favor. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Share this with someone who's grinding hard but feels stuck. And drop a comment. What's one hole you're going to fix today? Remember, asterisk, wealth isn't about luck. It's about wisdom.